This is insane. If you're Mexican, you could go to jail for up to 6 years just for sharing memes that make fun of politicians. Look, freedom of speech is dead. The party of Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, is pushing an anti-meme law that would impose up to 6 years in prison on anyone who posts memes, GIFs, or videos that humiliate politicians and public officials. The issue of national security, fighting organized crime, let's leave that for another day. There are priorities fighting memes. But anyway, as they're telling us right here, we can see there are tons of news stories talking about this. Jail time for making memes? That's the controversial anti-sticker law proposal from Morena. Morena is going after memes and stickers. A congressman is calling for punishment of anyone who creates, spreads, or manipulates images with up to 6 years in prison. A congressman is proposing this many years in prison for creating stickers, memes, and images with artificial intelligence. It's unbelievable. Congressman Armando Corona stated that 18.9 million Mexicans were victims of cyberbullying in 2024. Of course, they can sell this to you as a way or a method to fight online harassment. And on paper, it sounds like a really nice, wonderful idea to punish people who insult or bother others over the internet. Sure, but here's where the problem lies. We all know this will be used to go after people who criticize the government. It's that simple, that's the reality. And in every country where this is implemented, they'll do exactly the same thing. In England, in the United Kingdom, they've already applied it, they've already implemented it, and people are paying with jail time. Up to 12,000 people are arrested every year in England for making memes. Just imagine the level of craziness. It's just ridiculous, I know. That's why we're talking about it. But as ridiculous as it is, it's also very, very dangerous. Even if it doesn't seem like it, it's something extremely dangerous that could affect all of us. Because I'm telling you, these kinds of tools are used to fight dissent, to eliminate any criticism against the current government. But please, let's take a look at what this crazy proposal is all about.
Morena Party Congressman Armando Corona Arvizu presented a bill to add articles to the Federal Penal Code that would punish with up to 6 years in prison the creation and unauthorized distribution of images, videos, audio, or digital representations, including memes and stickers, generated with editing technologies or artificial intelligence that violate a person's identity or image. According to the bill presented on Tuesday, September 23rd, the legislator argued that the creation of this type of content, when done without consent, represents a modern form of violence that should neither be normalized nor allowed. Every manipulated image, every falsified audio, and every meme shared without authorization directly attacks the dignity, honor, and private life of individuals. Mexico cannot remain behind in the face of this reality.
Look, Mexico has other priorities. Mexico has a much bigger priority, and we all know exactly what it is. And that's fighting organized crime. Mexico is one of the most dangerous countries on planet Earth. But you know what? Let's be honest. Why would the government want to fight organized crime? Honestly, I don't think the government has any interest in getting rid of the criminals. But anyway, let's continue.
Just as, at the time, the so-called Olympia law brought attention to and penalized digital sexual violence, today it is essential to take another step and comprehensively protect the digital identity of citizens, the document reads. It was stated that the reform does not seek to limit freedom of expression, but rather to put a stop to abuse, to establish a balance between the right to express oneself and the right not to be violated in.
It's always the same, they always make it sound so nice.
The personal and social sphere. In addition, it was proposed to add Articles 211 bis 8 and 211 bis 9 to the Federal Penal Code, establishing punishments of 3 to 6 years in prison and fines of 300 to 600 days.
What complete madness! I mean, 6 years in prison for a meme.
These penalties will be increased in cases where the victim is a minor, a person with a disability, or a public servant in the exercise of their
duties. Pay attention to this. They tell you, the punishment will be harsher if the victim is a minor, a person with a disability, or a politician. What a bunch of clowns.
Their duties. If the material is spread massively or if the content has a verifiable impact on the victim's personal, work, or psychological life.
I still remember how for years we laughed about how in China, Xi Jinping banned people from comparing him to Winnie the Pooh. Do you remember? How many posts, how many media outlets talked about it? How much mockery was there in the West? And well, apparently politicians in the West also want to implement the same measure. Them. The only thing they were doing when Xi Jinping was banning Winnie the Pooh was that politicians in the West were taking notes. They were saying, "Oh, look, very interesting. We should do the same. We should learn from the master." And here they make a meme for us that sums up what the Mexican government is. Create laws to fight the cartels? No, not at all. Create laws to censor the population's right to freedom of expression? Welcome! Excellent. We love these laws. We love these measures. You know what's the most ironic part? That if this law had already been applied, this person would go to jail for making this meme. Unbelievable. But anyway, here's what they tell us. Armando Corona, a federal deputy from Morena, a political party in Mexico, proposed a bill to sanction with up to 6 years in prison the creation and unauthorized distribution of images, videos, audios, or digital representations generated with editing technologies or artificial intelligence, without the consent of the person involved. You know what's funny? That for this video, I'm going to make a thumbnail. I haven't made it yet, but I'm going to make it very soon. A thumbnail with Claudia Sheinbaum screaming. Well, this means that if this law were already in effect, I would go to jail for 6 years for doing that. Well, if I lived in Mexico, obviously. But now, here's what they're telling us. In the proposal, the congressman argued that deepfakes are no longer just for specialists, and have become a tool accessible to the general public, capable of making crimes go viral in a matter of minutes. According to the legislator, the ease of manipulating images, voices, and details of digital identity through artificial intelligence represents a real risk of defamation, harassment, identity theft, and psychological harm, risks that current Mexican legislation does not specifically address. The creation of memes has viral effects. In light of this, the document states that there is an urgent need for clear, punitive, and preventive regulations to protect personal identity and one's own image against improper use. Well, this man highlighted that, according to the National Institute of Statistics and Geography, INEGI, it was reported that in 2024, 18.9 million Mexicans aged 12 or older were victims of cyberbullying, which amounts to 21% of internet users in that age group. Among the identified methods of cyberbullying, the use of fake identities and the circulation of manipulated images for the purpose of aggression stand out. In addition, this affects women more severely, according to them, of course, since they face greater vulnerability to the malicious creation of such material. Look, let's be clear about this. I think this mainly affects people who are well-known. In other words, the more well-known you become, the more famous you are, the more likely it is that this kind of thing will happen to you. Yes, these methods of cyberbullying with fake identities, circulation of manipulated images, all of that is something experienced by people who have a certain level of fame, from politicians, actors, singers, and even influencers. Anyone who is well known is going to suffer from this kind of thing. And yes, I know. Both I and my YouTube colleagues can probably suffer from it. Even normal people can suffer from it. It's obvious. And this on paper should make both me and the YouTuber support this law because it's supposed to protect us. But not. Oh, no. Break here. This law is a trap. Pay attention. The punishments will be much harsher if the people harmed are children, people with disabilities, or politicians. That's the key, that's the secret. What they're really after is another way to get rid of political dissent, another way to silence criticism. It's that simple and straightforward. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.